Ramon Foster, I think would be fantastic, but between what he's doing in Knoxville, now I think it would just be impossible for him to
Mm.
do a full game day in Knoxville and then come back and do a full game day.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening to you, wherever you're listening from. It's Saturday, May 16th, and this is the Nashville Sports Report. All right, welcome back, everybody. So glad to have you here with us. My name is Russell Reese, Nashville native and long-suffering sports fan. Appreciate you tuning in on this hopefully wonderful Saturday. We'll see what the day brings. We started today with a clip from this week's and Nashville Sports Report's first ever guest, Hunter Bernstein, a buddy of mine who came on. And during our conversation on Thursday, he was suggesting Ramon Foster as a possible Coach Mack replacement. Roughly 24 hours later, it was reported that Ramon Foster will indeed be the new color commentator for Titans Radio. There's a lot more coming from a really great conversation I had with Hunter later in the show. But first, let's dive into the week. Last Saturday, Nashville SC returned home for their first match since falling to Tigres in the Champions Cup semifinals to face a rebuilding DC United squad. A sluggish first half saw them down 2-0. However, a DC United red card followed by 2 Warren Madrigal goals helped them escape with a draw. Christian Espinoza almost made it a full-on win when a shot hit the crossbar in extra time, but Nashville, I think, was happy to settle for a draw. Any other time that might have been a disappointment, but when you consider the results that Tigres, Toluca, and LAFC had, those are the other 3 CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinalists. They all decisively lost in their Saturday matches, so Nashville escaping with points is a pretty good thing. Then on Wednesday evening, Nashville SC, at the time was number 1 in the Eastern Conference, traveled to New England to face the Revolution, number 2 in the Eastern Conference, for a midweek showdown. They were also unbeaten at home at the time, but a 3-0 road win behind a Brian Acosta brace. For you non-soccer folks, that's what they call 2 goals to 1 player. And another Warren Madrigal goal sent a resounding message to the rest of the league. In the East, at the very least, Nashville are in a class by themselves, and it was a fitting way to cap their 100th win in MLS. Boys in Gold will get another good measuring stick game coming up on Sunday night at Geodis Park. That's tomorrow night at 7 p.m. when they'll be facing LAFC, the aforementioned other MLS semifinalists from the CCC. LAFC is currently in 5th in the West, which is at the moment, I think, a stronger conference of the two. They also have the second highest payroll in the league behind only Miami. I think a win against LAFC would send another very strong message to the rest of the league before Nashville heads into the World Cup break at the end of next week. Turning to Titans news now, veterans and rookies will report on Monday for organized team activities. You'll hear those called OTAs oftentimes. A lot of players have actually been in town already, getting in some work. There have been some clips of Carnell Tate catching passes from Cam Ward that I think have gotten a lot of Titans fans excited. Speaking of Cam Ward, it was announced this week that he will be one of 4 QBs to be featured on the new season of Quarterbacks, premiering on July 14th on Netflix. It will, I presume, follow his rookie season, the ups and downs, and we'll get a chance to know, I think, a little bit more about Cam off the field as well. Finally, in Titans news, their 2026 season schedule was announced along with the rest of the NFL on Thursday. Not too much to report. Robert Saleh will get a chance at, I guess, revenge against his old team, the New York Jets, in week 1 when they come to town. Offensive coordinator Brian Daboll won't have to wait much longer before facing his old team, the New York Giants, when the Titans travel up there in week 3. Outside of that, not much to report. No international games for the Titans this year, which frankly I think is a good thing. And no primetime games either, which is not as good. But perhaps some success this year will change that heading into the next season. Lastly, from this week, the Nashville Sounds are now 23-19 and finishing a 6-game homestand against the Iowa Cubs this weekend. Then on Tuesday, they'll travel to Durham for a 6-game series against the movie-famous Durham Bulls. All right. As mentioned previously, I had a conversation with my friend Hunter Bernstein on Thursday where we talked Nashville sports, the loss of Coach Mack, and who might replace him on Titans radio, again before the Ramon Foster announcement came out. As you listen to this conversation, a reminder that if you'd like to come on the show, please reach out to me. I'd love to have you. I'd love to talk whatever you want to talk about, plus a few questions that I'm going to insist on everybody joining the show answering. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Hunter Bernstein. All right. Well, Hunter, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking time to do this. Really appreciate you being here. I want to start off with a list of questions that I'm going to be asking anyone who is brave enough to come on the Sports Report. You get to be the guinea pig. If you don't mind, what is your favorite sport to play?
Yeah, man. Well, I prefer lab rat over guinea pig. So thanks for having me on, by the way. And my favorite sport to play is going to be a surprise, I think, to a lot of your listeners, is volleyball.
Oh,
I started playing volleyball in 8th grade at Boy Scout camp. Some guys that were out there asked me to try out for the high school team. So it was the summer of 8th grade.
right on.
And tried out for the team and made it and fell in love. And I played all the way through high school, was the captain of my varsity team in high school. And then I went on to play club volleyball at Tennessee when I was a student there. Really great culture within that sport, really fun, really inclusive group of people. And I encourage anybody that hasn't played volleyball before to go out and pick it up.
That's awesome. I must admit, every 4 years, I enjoy the volleyball in the Olympics, the indoor style. I never understood how the three guys will jump and the middle guy will hit it. And are they calling plays or what? How does that work?
Yeah, they do. They do run plays. So when I played, I am not a tall person, as you know. So I played the position that's called libero, which is the defensive specialist. So for the big guys that can't pass, they would put me in and when they would rotate to the back row. But typically the setter would call out a play. And so when we played, we do USA or 1, 2, and 3. And so USA was a on the net hit. So U was left side, S was middle, A was right. And then 1, 2, and 3 were where you'd hit from that 10-foot line. So like a back hit. So somebody in the back row would hit. There's more complicated plays than that. But typically there's some sort of you call out a position and then the other players will actually kind of fake out so that the defense doesn't really know where the hit's coming from. It can get pretty complex.
So I take it every team has their own variations on those calls. Not everybody's doing the USA 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, if you go to Ohio State, I'm sure it would be like OSU or something like that. I mean, granted, this was almost 20 years ago, so I'm sure things have evolved since then.
And libero, that's the one that has the different colored jersey, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That is the sum total of my volleyball knowledge. And what is your favorite sport to watch?
This one, a little bit more mainstream. I love watching football. I love watching college football. I love watching the NFL. It's a spectacle. It's got every interesting component of life baked in. There's drama, there's egos, there's characters, and then you've also got just the athleticism, what human bodies are capable of doing, and the specialization when you talk about offensive line, defensive line, to a running back, to a wide receiver, and how they develop their bodies specific to play that position is incredible to me. As you've seen over the past few years, is you've kind of got these hybrid guys now that can kind of do it all. You've got these slot guys that can line up in the backfield. You've got these, wiry tight ends that can kind of block, but they can also really get open and they know the route trees. So I love football. It's great to watch and it keeps me on the edge of my seat every season.
This was not one of the questions I intended to ask, but you mentioned going to UT. What was the best game you saw while you were a student at UT?
So this is a complicated question. The questions that you've asked, they kind of tease out a little bit of the complicated nature, I think, of being a sports fan. But there's this memorable versus best. I got to see Eric Berry play in that night game when they broke out the black pennies.
All Blacks. That was the first time, wasn't it? I think that was the first time they ever wore the All Blacks.
Yeah, and there's an interesting story, and I don't know the specifics of it, and I'm sure your listeners will correct me, but there was a plan to have a full black uniform, but there were some sort of delays in production with Adidas. And so they didn't send the right equipment, but they still wanted to wear those black jerseys. And so there was a lot of controversy, I guess, that, the white helmet with the black jersey and the orange pants and everything, but it was against South Carolina and it was a big game. I actually went out and bought like the Eric Berry, like the t-shirt version instead of the jersey because I couldn't afford the jersey at that time. That's got to be one of the most memorable or the best. And then I think memorable would have been that LSU lost with too many men on the field. Those of you that remember Blackberries, I lost a Blackberry that night. Definitely smashed my phone after that. I'm a less passionate fan than I was in my 20s. I'll leave it at that.
Well, we all mellow with age. Speaking of younger ages, what is your earliest sports memory?
So I tossed this one around a lot because, growing up, my parents weren't really sports fans at all. I mean, we didn't really have sports on the TV unless it was the Super Bowl or Olympics. My parents always tuned in for the Olympics. But my earliest memory I have is at Oriole Park. This was in Baltimore, and my mom was heckling Cal Ripken Jr. because he wouldn't give me an autograph in an empty stadium before the game. And she continued to heckle him throughout the game. I think I was 7 or 8, but that's kind of my earliest sports memory.
Did you end up getting the autograph or
Did not get that
dice?
autograph.
Your mom gave it too hard to Cal and he was like, I'm out of this.
Yeah, but there was some entertainment value because I would venture to say that was probably the first and last time that the Iron Man got heckled in his own stadium.
Heckled at home, sure.
Baseball park.
Pivoting more to sort of Nashville-related stuff, how did you end up coming to Nashville?
Yeah, so this is a long story, but made my way to Nashville via my parents moved here in 2005. I was still working in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, going to community college. They really wanted me to go to a 4-year school. Looked at MTSU. That wasn't really for me. Ended up touring UT Knoxville. I didn't really think it would. I was like a big school person, but it ended up really resonating with me. And so I ended up going there. And so I would come home to Nashville from, starting in 2005. And then I moved to Nashville full time in 2011. Actually, my father was sick with lung cancer. And so I wanted to spend some time with him before he ultimately passed. But yeah, I've been in Nashville over 20 years, which was kind of wild to think about.
As someone who's lost his father to cancer as well, my condolences. It's just a terrible thing and really nothing more I can say, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. And same to you. It's, we're still young. And so, you're a new father and same for me with young kids. And, I think he definitely lives on through them, even though they never met. But that's probably the hardest part is, him not being able to experience that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I totally understand and agree. Well, no good way to segue from that.
But, yeah, it's like we segue from that. Let's go on to cancer too.
So bad segue from that. What is your favorite Nashville sports team, or what was your sort of earliest entry into Nashville sports after you moved here?
Yeah, so this is a really fun question for me to answer too. First of all, Titans, tighten up. I don't think I can say you can bleed two-tone blue anymore, although I think the Navy is technically a secondary color still. So the story behind my Titans fandom actually predates any connection at all that I had to Tennessee, other than NFL Blitz on PlayStation, where I always played as the Titans because I like to do backflips when Eddie George was on fire into the end zone. But there was a big blizzard in my hometown the year that the Titans played in the Super Bowl, and only one of my friends had power. And so we all went over to his house, and his parents did like the grid, where you pick squares based on the numbers, and the corresponding score is how you ultimately get paid. And so we did that, and I won the first 3 quarters.
Oh, nice.
And in order for me to win the last quarter, the Titans needed to score that last touchdown. And so on that drive, I was rooting for the Titans, obviously, to score that touchdown, and ultimately came up a yard short. And I love the idea of underdogs. I love the style that the Titans play. Well, traditionally, the Titans have played, which
Mm-hmm.
was this strong defense that was kind of predicated on a strong running back. So it was kind of this pound you into submission, squeeze you out. And I like that style of football, although it's not the most flashy. But that's the story of why I'm a huge Titans fan. But yeah, Tighten up for life.
Right on. Yeah, I guess that famous Steve McMayer play where he got out of the would-be sack and threw it down, I guess the play right before Dyson almost hit the end zone. I guess you
Right.
get to really live with that like the rest of the Titans fans.
Yeah, and I certainly remember that drive, probably more so than any other. And it probably part of it, like the replays over the year and the way that it's kind of been sealed in the book of NFL history.
Mm.
And it's often talked about as, the best Super Bowl, if not the best Super Bowl, and the way that it ended on that dramatic drive. I mean, if you don't love that, regardless of being a football fan, like you got to check your pulse. Like,
Absolutely.
that's incredible.
Couldn't agree more. Although at the time I was completely despondent. So this segues nicely into what is your favorite Nashville sports memory or moment?
So there's moments, and I think Nashville being a unique market, a lot of them don't get the big attention, but the atmosphere when the Preds made the playoff run is certainly something that stands out to me. The other one that I witnessed in person, unfortunately, was the Ravens loss, in the playoffs. And I think it was 13-10. It was a field goal when Matt Stover,
Oh, was that the year
um,
CJ got hurt and was out at the half?
2009.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one hurt. And I know you said best, but I'm just trying to.
I mean, just any memory is good. I mean, they're all, highs and lows. They got to go together, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. But the playoffs, I think, with the playoffs run, just being in that building was unlike any. And this is coming from somebody that went to Tennessee. Okay, I mean,
mm,
when I was at Tennessee, they were god awful. In fact, for the first year I was there, we lost to Wyoming
yeah.
in Cal, and that was like the end of Fulmer. And then we're lighting couches on fire with when Lane Kiffin left, and then it was Butch, and good night. That was rough times. But that being said, that atmosphere, I've never been a part of something like that in sports. Certainly the Preds run is up at the top of my list.
Right on. I was working at a restaurant in Nashville called Flight, literally
Yeah, the
working.
wine bar.
Yeah, I was working as a chef there the night of that Ravens game, and our sous chef said, I was worried we were going to have to take your knife away. You look so upset.
Hey, it's like one of those things about being a sports fan, and truly, I know you're passionate about this and, running with your show now. It's a real kind of passion that it becomes part of your identity, right? When you're talking about maybe you have friends or whomever that like other teams or rival teams, it's real. And
Yeah,
people that aren't fans, like, don't get it, but it's called fan for a reason. I mean, fanatical. It's true.
totally. I hate to keep bringing it back to myself. I was emailing with a buddy of mine from college who's from the Boston area. And in college, I got to watch that first Red Sox run all the way through to them winning that World Series. I got to watch that with a bunch of buddies from Boston. We were talking about the fact that it's gone from that to like the Sox have won four since then. The
Right.
Bruins have won a couple. The Celts have won a couple. Obviously, the Pats have done what
Pats.
they've done. And to just sort of like think back on where all those guys were, they couldn't even believe the good fortune of winning that one World Series. And I just hope that one day we can have a similar sort of look back and go, yeah, man, you remember that? That was crazy. I do
Yeah.
think Cam
And this
Ward and
leads
Robert
into
Sala.
another one of your questions that you're going to ask in a minute.
Oh,
But and also, like, you don't have to apologize for talking about yourself. You brought me on, and I feel like I'm talking about myself too
no,
much. So
I want
I
to
love
hear
it.
from you. See, this is one of the things I want to do on this show is I really want to center everyone's fan experience because I think everybody has a different and unique interaction with sports and it means different things to different people. And, we hear a lot about a lot of aspects of sports already, but we don't really hear that much about the real masses behind the sports, which are the fans. And I think it's really interesting to learn those things and hear that kind of stuff. So I really like, my goal is to have more of these kinds of conversations. And it's why on my show, I've been encouraging people to like, you want to talk about something, hit me up, get on, let's talk, because I think that sort of stuff is really interesting.
You're right. I think the market's kind of saturated with insiders and folks that are really just kind of reading headlines and pontificating. especially in the off season, right? I think there is room for chat and people to kind of connect on their fandom and observe and kind of take in each other's experience. And I think that's what's cool about sports, right? And you'll see people travel. You've got your NSC shirt on, and so like imagine you're in another country, but it's like somebody stops you and says like Super Sam Surridge, we went to high school together, but
Yeah, actually, I got
but
a shout out in Venice from a German teenager. It was, oh, Henny Mukhtar. I was wearing
yeah,
my Nashville SC jersey.
yeah, I love that. And when I travel, I like to rock, Tennessee or Nashville sports stuff because people will engage with you, or they'll, when I'm wearing Tennessee stuff most of the time, they'll just talk a bunch of smack. But I love it.
I think you bring up a great point too. A lot of people talk about a lack of third spaces in our society these days, but going to the ballpark, that is one of the third spaces that persists, is going to see a game. You become friends with the people in the area where you sit, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we've been to a couple games before, and I've got to shoot you that pic because there's another buddy of ours that's in the pic, and he's not a big sports guy, but we found a particularly interesting fan with I think it said Miss Money on the back of her Titans jersey, and we had a really good conversation, and somebody that we probably wouldn't have run into out in the. But I agree. I think just it is a very unique space for people to kind of come together and take in something.
Yeah. Well, shoot me that pic, and if you're all right with it, I'll tweet it out on the social media, at NSH Sports Report on Twitter and Blue Sky. Another shameless plug there. Okay, moving right along. I want to ask about who is on your Mount Rushmore of Nashville sports.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some guys that have come through here over the years, and I thought about this one for a while. I mean, Steve McNair's going up, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a ton of debate around that. The next three might be a little controversial, but that's okay because it's my Mount Rushmore.
Your Mount Rushmore.
And I don't believe in putting up statues anyway, so I just want to throw that out there. So in terms of what I got to witness and experience, like I played Eddie George in video games, right? But like as a Titans fan, didn't really get to see him play in person. So he is not on Mount Rushmore. Eddie, if you're listening, I named my dog after you. So I'm still a huge fan. I'm just telling you what my experience is. Derrick Henry's going up. Pecorine is going up. And then my guy CJ2K is going up. I think you could put a Keith Bullock in there. You could put a Frank Wycheck in there. Certainly Eddie George. I think you kind of have this old Titan, new Titan coming in, and Philip Forsberg, obviously, Hani Mukhtar. I think you got to put him in a GOAT conversation for Nashville too.
No, I think that's a great four, and you can make a reasonable argument for all four of those guys. They've all had major impact. I remember going to training camp after the Titans drafted CJ, and that very first time I saw him turn a corner and just burn some dudes, and it was like, oh, this is a whole different level of speed. That it was incredible.
Yeah, I think there is an argument to be made that Chris Johnson, as an athlete and as an NFL player, kind of changed the sport. I mean, truly. And I know that maybe I'll get some pushback and there'll be some other folks in there, but he was as dynamic of an athlete as you could possibly. I mean, the guy's like created in a lab and had success. It wasn't gimmicky. The guy found a hole and he went through it. Now he was backed by potentially one of the best offensive lines ever, but all that to say, I think he kind of changed the sport.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, especially with the pass catching ability and the sort of long handoffs that they could do out on the flanks, like CJ was a whole different level of a threat that we really hadn't seen before. But you mentioned some stuff that might be controversial, and that leads easily into this next question, which is, do you have any Nashville sports conspiracy theories or hot takes that you want to share?
I've got, again, this is a whole show. So conspiracies, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I do have a couple of hot takes, though. I know that it doesn't apply to anybody that's listening to this show, but this is a fair weather sports town, man. Like, what's going on? Like, I get it to a certain degree, but you've got this size of this market and having professional sports, I would think that we would have a little better attendance across the board. Now, I know you have a diehard group of fans that show up for each individual sport, but by and large, man, I've been a season ticket owner for the Titans for many years now. Now the product on the field hadn't been all that great, so you can't blame people so much, but or somebody did this study on the Athletic or something, but like, or at the Athletic, that the Titans have the lowest fan engagement on social media and through digital media than any other fan base. And I think that makes a little bit of sense when you think about the pocket of Nashville and the market, the surrounding markets. I mean, you've got Atlanta and Carolina and, the Chiefs and the Bengals. And so you've got teams kind of surrounding the area. But I think it also speaks to the fact that there hasn't been a superstar on the Titans in a long, long time. So something to think about there. Kind of a hot take, but also kind of reality.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I kind of think of Nashville as sometimes like LA light, where it's like, they always say like in LA, like there's so much to do and like you got to be a winner to get people out. And I think to a certain degree, you get some of that in Nashville where there's so many other things that you can go and do entertainment wise. But I also think, it's sort of like you got all these transplants moving in who, why are they going to pick up the Titans when the Titans are bad and they've come from Seattle or they've come from Chicago or, and I don't blame them. I remember when the Preds first started playing and, we had all those Detroit transplants from
the Pred Wings.
Yeah, they were living down in Spring Hill working at Saturn and like every game that wasn't the Red Wings, great rowdy support. And then, we were in the same division as the Wings at the time. And those games would always just be flip a switch.
That's right.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And I was talking about Vandy women last week, women's basketball team. They were top 5 in the country last year, and they were literally selling tickets for $1, which is just crazy to me. And they, like, I guess I'm gonna reiterate the point I made last week, which was like, you want to see some high level athletics on the cheap, which you really can't do in Nashville. It's Vandy women to me.
Right. Yeah. I mean you reference this, and I certainly want to acknowledge the historical significance of Memorial Gym. But that place is a dump, man. They gotta fix that. I mean, the air in there, and like, I get it. Like, I'm a Tennessee fan too, so I'll preface that. The setup is cool and unique and special. That university needs to make an investment, and I think it's coming. I'd imagine.
I think it is. They've actually done some improvements. They've uninstalled the benches on, I think, 3 sides and put in actual seats. And so I think the 4th side's coming soon. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's needed some love for a while, and they've been spending money and attention everywhere else. And Memorial, funny enough, if you look at the Wikipedia page, one of the nicknames on Wikipedia is the Fenway Park of college basketball, which I guess because of its weird sort of
it's a tough place to play. I've watched many Tennessee Vanderbilt games in that building. Putting the coach under the goal is it's challenging if you're not prepared for it. And also, people say what they want about Vandy fans and all the pejoratives that get thrown around, but they're smart basketball fans. And when that place is firing on all cylinders, I'd put it up there as one of the hardest places to play in the country. And I think anybody would objectively tell you that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think, too, the elevated court, having the people sort of down lower on the sides is very unique and kind of adds to that sort of centering of the noise and the hectic nature of the place.
Agreed. All right, I got one more hot take if we got time.
Absolutely. We got all the time in the world.
So the Predators logo might be the worst logo in sports.
Oh, okay.
There's just something about it. It just bothers me. And not that I'm like some sort of graphic designer or anything, but like the more that you look at it, the more problems that you see. Like, I think on the surface level, you kind of look at it, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like saber-toothed tiger, like big teeth, but the lines in it and like the way that the jaw is underneath the teeth and like the shading, and they got to do something with that. They got to fix it. And I think they tried. They did that like throwback thing that was kind of cool. And then there was that other one that was even worse on that yellow, on the mustard.
Oh, the mustard cat jerseys.
Like, guys, this is a very large city now full of really talented people. Please, if you're listening out there, start submitting. Let's get this thing changed because it's kind of an embarrassment.
Right on. That is a great hot take. And, I like it sometimes and I dislike it sometimes. I do think the simpler the better, which actually is why I really like the Titans rebrand, because it looks a lot simpler, and I could see the Preds doing something as well. Along those lines, I even thought at the time when they named the team the Predators, it was kind of questionable, but it's only gotten more so. Like, since the Preds were founded in '98, the term Predator has pretty much exclusively become something with negative connotations that maybe doesn't exactly strike fear in the hearts of people. And I always pictured that.
Well, maybe it does, just in the wrong
Well,
way.
yeah, maybe that's it. I always kind of thought other teams would riff on To Catch a Predator, and I'm like, oh, come here, have a seat. Like, put on
Chris
the
Hansen,
jumbotron. Yeah.
they should lean into that, like during the game experience. They should lean into the Chris Hansen thing, and they won't for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But most of these franchises now have this level of self-awareness, which is a product of the social media age, I think. But maybe I think along those lines, I think the Preds maybe are due for a rebrand.
Yeah, you may be right. I think I'd be okay with it probably.
Yeah.
Well, those are some great hot takes. Want to pivot to my one non-sports related question, and that is, what is your favorite restaurant in Nashville?
This is a tough one because I think you and I both love some J. Alexander's, but that's a chain. So I'm not going to count it, even though it's a Nashville-based chain. I'm going to go with City House. City House is what I would call kind of the first of the third wave Nashville restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like really focused on local ingredients and, not having the spiral notebook menu. It's really kind of like, this is what we're making today. If you don't like it, then, you can go to Carrabba's or Applebee's, and that's fine. But I love it, and lots of good memories of birthdays and anniversaries and things over the years. The staff there, they're fantastic. The food is always consistent and good and curated. And that belly ham pizza is one of the best bites on planet Earth, in my opinion. Just don't tell my rabbi I said that, but delicious, great restaurant. If you haven't eaten there, you got to go. And the other thing is like in this market, when you go out to eat somewhere, maybe you enjoy a cocktail, or maybe you don't enjoy a cocktail. It's going to be around $200 at least, probably, to have like to go all in. City
Mm-hmm.
House is very reasonable. You can get in and out of there, have a drink or two, and you don't feel like you don't know what you paid for. So that's the other
Yeah,
thing that I love about City House.
I dig that. I'll add one other thing that I really appreciate about City House is every time we've eaten there, I've never been asked, so do you guys know how we work? Like, I cannot stand, you go to a restaurant, do you know how we work? Well, I assume you
Yeah,
give me a menu and I pick food from the menu and you bring it to me. If it's more than that, like, no thank
like that's the classic, like we do things a little differently
you.
here, and it's like, oh, like calling a sandwich a handheld.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Didn't-
man. All right. Well, thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate you taking the time to think about it. Let's pivot then to we were in a group chat, as you mentioned, we've been friends for a while, and you and I got to discussing the loss of Coach Mack, which was obviously a big loss for the Titans community and a Nashville community as well. And talking about who we thought might be a replacement, not that he can truly be replaced. I think we both have had many years listening to Coach Mack call games in such a way that while I never met him, I always sort of felt familiar with him enough
Yeah.
that like losing him hurt. It really, as I'm just some guy. It's still it's a real loss. No offense to Mike Keith, but I think it hurts a little bit more than Mike moving on. I guess maybe because Mike's still alive. That's a good thing.
And I mean, and as a Tennessee fan, you can still catch Mike, and the amount of content that Vol Radio is putting out
Mm,
now is unbelievable. And the social media, I mean, that side is totally taken off. And I agree. I think as somebody that listens to 104.5 The Zone every day, sometimes all day, Coach Mack was just kind of that voice in your life. And oftentimes like the voice of reason, and sometimes you need a laugh, and or just in your day, you just kind of need a laugh. And like the Macisms and the things that he would say, that, that kind of Texas country wisdom, and the kind of everyman thing. I've really missed that a lot, and I've missed it more than it's one of those things is when it's gone, it's gone, right? And then you're like, oh wow, that's heavy. That's a big loss. So I agree. It's really been tough to kind of go through that as a fan, because even though I'd never met the guy, he was a big part of my life in a very kind of strange way to say out loud. But
Yeah. Yeah, my wife honestly never really liked Mike Keith, but she always kind of liked Coach Mack for whatever reason. She didn't like sack or the big yells from Mike, but
sure.
Coach Mack would get going, and she's like, "Yeah, this guy's all right." And she's not a sports person, so high praise from her. Having said all that, we kind of talked in the group chat about who we think may potentially be a replacement. And from my point of view, it feels like there's a few criteria. You obviously got to have some relation to the Titans organization. They need to be good on the microphone, but I do also think that it's probably not going to be one of these guys who is regularly on daily. It's not going to be Blaine. It's not going to be D-Mace, probably. Those guys are already got their gigs. They, I think, are maybe a little oversaturated or a little sort of into sports talk in a way that might not be conducive to what Titans radio is looking for. So, having said all that, who do you feel like we may end up seeing?
I think it's going to be Kevin Dyson. If I had to venture a guess, I think that he's certainly the safest option. I think he's a name that resonates with the fan base. And I think it's the easiest plug and play. If I had to guess, it would be him. I think he would be great, incredibly savvy. He's got a great presence in radio. I think the one, and I feel like Taylor Zarzer is great. It's still new. I'm still finding myself adjusting, but I wonder if Kevin Dyson will bring the same kind of energy that, like, and listen, we can't compare to Coach Mack. I mean, when Coach Mack took over for Frank Wycheck, remember, it was, I mean, that was a big deal. And people had the same concerns. I just wonder, like, you need that voice of the fan on the broadcast. And I felt like Mac and Frank carried that torch. I'm curious, and I'm certainly not saying that he won't, but Kevin Dyson's not a fan, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I think he
and
is.
Frank Wycheck wasn't either, I guess, but it felt like he was. And so I'm curious to see if it does end up being Kevin Dyson, if he's gonna kind of be the voice of the fan on the broadcast, and the way that Coach Mack would like chirp at the refs and the calls and the plays and the opposing fan base and the teams. Like, I hope we still have some of that with whoever takes over.
Yeah. I was, when we were talking about this, I was thinking the same thing, Kevin Dyson. And then just the other day, I watched a video that the Titans put out with Kevin Dyson, Derek Morgan, Avery Williamson, and Delaney Walker talking to the new draft class. And they mentioned in there that Kevin Dyson is opening a new charter school, I think this fall.
Oh.
So that made me think he may not have the capacity or the availability. And it could be one of these things where they bring Dyson on and maybe somebody else to kind of be the third guy. But I also came away from that video thinking, like, what about Delaney Walker?
Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, that's an electric personality, and he has his own show, right?
I think maybe he does. I'm not entirely sure. I know Keith Bullock does, and I know a bunch of former players do.
He would be great. And I think that's somebody that would resonate with the fan base and also connect, I think, with the next generation, because a lot of these younger fans remember Delaney Walker.
Right.
And he was kind of the face of the franchise with Lawan and Henry. Yeah, I hadn't really thought too much about Delaney Walker.
I honestly
that would be
hadn't
a
either.
great one.
On that same video when they're talking about Dyson starting the charter school, and just listening to Delaney kind of talk to the new guys and hear him sort of convey some of his experiences. He's got that lived experience, because that was another great thing about Coach Mack was, he had stories for days.
Yes.
And I don't know that Delaney obviously doesn't have the same types of stories, but he's had his own football journey that took him a lot of places. And he came up like a 6th rounder and really made his bones as a special team player before breaking out with us. So I think Delaney might be worth a thought as well. But if we're going to talk about sort of more outside thoughts, you got any like wild cards you'd like to see? Any sort of crazy off the walls jelly roll, or any that sort of stuff?
Man, that would be a good, I guess. Kyle Brandt seems to be a big Titans guy who's on what's the morning show on NFL Network?
Oh yeah, the Football Morning in America or
He
whatever it
comes
is.
out. He comes out for the Titans. I'm sure he's busy with that NFL media gig and covering game day and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he would be great. But again, I think you got to lean into the former players. We talked about Jason McCourty
Yeah.
a little bit. I think with Jason McCourty though, he's kind of put himself in. He is like this polished play-by-play analyst guy now, and so not really like the color guy, and that's kind of what this position has him at. And I think he would be great, but know that he's like a color analyst. Like I don't know that he's spontaneous enough, like hard on the sleeve, which is why I think Delaney would be great. I think there's an argument for Taylor Lewan now. I think he's a controversial figure, maybe outside of Nashville. And then I would maybe wonder, just with his schedule and the things that he has going on, would that even be something that he would consider?
That's a great call. I hadn't thought about
But I don't
that.
know that that's like a far flung, because I think I would consider him the biggest national media voice for the Titans at this point. That show is covering Titans content at a clip that's no other show nationally is. Yeah, those would be, I guess those would be maybe some of mine. What about you? I mean, Delaney, I feel like that's kind of would be a home run, I think.
Yeah, I think Delaney is one I'm really into. Sort of more of a what if, and it's sort of a kind of maybe more of a humorous idea. I was thinking about, maybe go the old coach route and like pull in Jim Schwartz or somebody along those lines.
Schwartz is still coaching,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's one of the drawbacks there. I think he is still in Cleveland, or did he leave after they didn't give him the head coaching job? I don't remember.
What about Fish?
Yeah, Fish would be a good idea.
He's kind of a soft-spoken guy,
He's
though.
a little California laid back though, with that sort of.
Yeah, he's pretty chill.
But yeah, I'm not really sure. I kind of like thought, all right, it's going to be Dyson, and then I saw that video that I referenced. Wouldn't mind seeing Delaney, Brad Hopkins might.
Yeah,
somebody
he's
like
great
that.
on the post-game show. Enjoy his coverage. He's another really kind of chill, laid back. What's up with all these like chill, laid back Titans? Because KB, I think Keith Bullock, I'd throw his name in the hat now.
Yeah. He's definitely got a show. But I think, as much as I love Keith Bullock, I think he has a tendency to get a little petty online. He'll snipe at people, and I hope I'm not bringing down his wrath on me now. But I think Keith likes to mix it up online and social media, and really kind of dog people in a way that maybe the Titans would be open to it, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you've got this new brand that the Titans are pushing, and although I'm not easily offended, and I also know that Keith Bullock's a good person, and
oh yeah, absolutely,
and is a Titan through and through, I think. Yeah, I could see there's probably a hard stop there, which kind of stinks, man, because I feel like we've kind of entered this world of, we kind of punish people for being true to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the guy's just earned his place where he feels like he can say what he wants, and he's actually not wrong. Like, he definitely can, but I think the reality is, and I tell my kids this all the time, is like, you can say and do whatever you want. I mean, to an extent, you can say whatever you want, right? When you do, it's a different story. But that doesn't mean that there's not consequences, right? And so the consequence there of using your potty mouth on in the Twitterverse or whatever is, yeah, maybe you don't get opportunities like this, but I think he's doing just fine.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to insinuate that Keith Bullock has a potty mouth by any means. I just think sometimes he likes to, at least when I was on Twitter, it seemed like he would get into it with people and then more power to him. I think you're right. He is Titans legend, and I could totally hear Taylor Zazzar going, oh, and with me is Mr. Monday Night. I do wonder about these guys that have their own, shows that they've built up, what that looks like if they take the gig. What would it mean to a Taylor Lewan or to a Keith Bullock if they did start doing the play-by-play? Would there be stipulations on what they could and couldn't do with their show, and what that it might be nothing, but I wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah, there's some of these guys that just, I feel like they're on everything, like Buck Rising, like he's on Titans radio, and then he's got A to Z, and then, his show on 104.5, and then he
Big
does,
install and
I feel like he's everywhere. So I would imagine that maybe there's some of these allowances
yeah.
within their contract, and as long as there's no conflicts or anything like that. Ramon Foster, I think, would be fantastic, but between what he's doing in Knoxville, now, I think it would just be impossible for him to
Mm.
do a full game day in Knoxville and then come back and do a full game day and then wake up Monday morning and do Ramon and Will. But he would be absolutely awesome. But he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and he did some sideline reporting, I think, a couple seasons ago for the Titans. I don't know how that works then contractually with those guys.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see sometime. I imagine they'll make an announcement by the end of July, probably, or maybe they'll use preseason to start auditioning some guys. I don't know, but I look forward to hearing what they say.
Yeah, me too. I think it's an opportunity to kind of tie in the rebrand into. So I think I'm confident with all the other decisions that they've made at this level that they'll find the right person.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on. We'd love to have you back in the future.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, Russ.
All right. There's our conversation with Hunter. My thanks again to him for joining me this week. Reminder, if you'd like to come on to the Nashville Sports Report, I can be reached at nashvillesportsreport@gmail.com or on Twitter and Blue Sky at NSH Sports Report. That'll do it for me this week. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and a great week. Talk to you next week.